This is definitely the most ethical psychiatrist in the world. Whenever his patients are tormented by villains, he will take a knife and kill those villains.
그렇게 하나도 치료해 나갔죠. 매번 최선을 다해 새롭고 참신하게.
His treatment takes care of both the symptoms and the root cause. No medication, no surgery needed. Patients immediately stop feeling depressed, and each of them regains their passion for life. All patients who have received his treatment praise it. But right after curing his 11th patient, the doctor suddenly called. A well-known journalist, the doctor not only revealed his identity as a serial killer, but also invited the journalist to conduct an exclusive interview with him. Is he tired of his life of killing, and ready to turn himself in? Or does the interview itself hide an unknown secret? One day, Baek Sunju, a journalist from MBS TV station, suddenly received a call from a stranger. On the other end was a man with a deep, magnetic voice, but what he said shocked Sunju greatly. The man claimed to be the serial killer who had murdered 11 people, and he took the initiative to propose an exclusive interview with Sunju. Although the news was very appalling, Sunju had an inexplicable feeling that the man wasn't lying to her, so despite the great risk, Sunju still decided to keep the appointment on time. But Sunju wasn't foolish. She also called a helper to prevent any unmanageable accidents that might occur later. In fact, there was a reason why Sunju insisted on accepting the interview. Due to the issue with the Ilsong Group, the company was gradually sidelining her. If she called the police now and attracted certain attention, the company would definitely not let her conduct the interview. Therefore, for the sake of her career, she must take the initiative now. But what confused the helper was that the man mentioned there was no connection at all between the 11 cases. And this was the strangest part, because serial killers usually follow a certain fixed pattern or motive when committing crimes. Since this man was so different, there must be a motive worth digging into behind his actions.
아무리 그래도 이거 과잉 취재야. 특종 때문에 선 넘었다고 욕먹을 거 뻔하잖아.
Sunju, but pulled out a phone recording. The man who claimed to be a serial killer said he would kill again at midnight 3 days later, but if Sunju agreed to the interview, he would give the victim a chance to survive. So Sunju's trip wasn't just about getting an exclusive story. The most important thing was to save a life. When they arrived at the agreed hotel, Sunju got out of the car first and went to the front desk. The man had already booked a room for her, with the room number 2701, but Sunju soon noticed that staff were repairing the surveillance wiring in the lobby, meaning the monitors wouldn't work properly for a while. This must have been why the man chose this place. Later, Sunju first put on the walkie-talkie device to communicate with her helper, then used a tool to copy the room card for 2701. After leaving the copied card in the elevator, she went to room 2701. She needed to hurry and install the hidden camera and bug before the man arrived. At the same time, her helper got on the elevator, took the copied room card, and went to the pre-booked room 2601. Now, the two were positioned exactly one above the other. After confirming all devices were working properly, they waited quietly for the man to appear. Time quickly reached the agreed hour of 3 o'clock. The moment the second hand hit 12, the doorbell of room 2701 rang right on time. Clearly, this man was punctual to an almost harsh degree. Sunju took a long breath before stepping forward to open the door. The moment she saw him, she knew he was the man who had called her.
들어가도 될까요?
네.
After the man sat down, Sunju looked at him carefully. He wore a well-fitted suit that was neat and wrinkle-free, with exquisite and expensive accessories, plus a neatly styled slick-back hairstyle. He looked like a meticulous elite at first glance. He was exactly as she had imagined. The reason was, the man claimed to have committed 11 murders, yet he left not even a single hair at the crime scenes, and hundreds of surveillance cameras near the crime sites had failed to capture him. This showed he was meticulous and had strong anti-investigation skills. And people like this usually had excellent self-management. After a few casual words, Sunju got straight to the point and asked the man to prove that what he had said earlier was true. The man pulled a phone from his suit's inner pocket and handed it to Sunju. Inside were complete videos of his murders, including bludgeoning, stabbing, and dismemberment with a chainsaw. Surprisingly, none of the 11 victims had the same cause of death. The more Sunju and her helper watched, the more shocked they became. This man was indeed a psychopathic serial killer. Sunju couldn't bear to watch any longer, so she quickly returned the phone to the man, and the official interview began right after. But the man refused to share his name or age. In his view, this wasn't a refusal to disclose his identity. He simply thought who he was didn't matter. The helper told Sunju to just film his face. They would check his identity later. It turned out that Junho, the helper Sunju had brought along, was a policeman. Sunju had to move on to the next question. She asked why the man was so insistent on doing the interview.
스스로 점검해볼 기회가 필요했습니다. 지금까지 제가 해온 일들이 정당한지에 대해서.
Sunju immediately followed up. Do you think your act of killing is ethically justified? It turned out that all the people he killed either had prior convictions for serious crimes, or had done many bad things. Could it be that he was killing selectively to purify society? But the man shook his head and denied Sunju's speculation. His purpose for killing was actually very simple. It was purely to treat his own patients.
정신과 전문이거든요.
This answer was completely beyond Sunju's expectation. The man explained unhurriedly, the people he killed were the mental illnesses of his patients, like tumor masses parasitic on his patients' souls. Only by completely removing these lesions could his patients achieve true liberation. But after hearing this, Sunju became even more confused. According to what the man said, this incident involved more people, so why did he still risk exposing his murders to do the interview? The man replied with a calm gaze, there are always things in this world that must be done, even if they involve danger. But the next second, the man turned the question on Sunju, why do you risk coming to interview me? Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? Sunju looked straight at him, and said she was just doing what she should do. Besides, the man had promised her earlier that he would ensure her safety, as long as she kept the secret.
그래서 비밀을 지키셨나요?
네.
역시 제 선택이 옳았네요. 기자님만큼은 믿을만하다고 생각했거든요.
The man had already checked Sunju's background, and knew she had been outstanding, since she started this career. That was why he gave her this exclusive story. It was, after all, a great opportunity for a journalist. But this opportunistic remark annoyed Sunju. Although she did have the selfish desire to pursue an exclusive story, she knew this went against a journalist's professional ethics and moral bottom line. So she had convinced herself that she was here to save a life. Unexpectedly, the man pointed out her true thought right then and there. Sunju asked who he was going to kill tonight, but the man bluntly said he didn't want to tell her. Sunju stood up resolutely, planning to end this absurd interview, but just as she was about to leave the room, and Junho was ready to arrest the man suddenly said, if you leave this room, that person will die immediately, but as long as you finish the interview, I'll tell you who that person is. Sunju's steps suddenly froze. After hesitating for a long time, she finally sat back down and resumed the interview. The first question, what was the man's motive? The man told Sunju a story. There was a kind woman who got married and became pregnant smoothly, and she looked forward to welcoming the new life with great expectation. But one day, she was assaulted by an evil scoundrel in the underground parking lot. Although the scoundrel was arrested by the police, and the woman gave birth to the child safely, she still couldn't forget that memory. So she developed a mental illness and always felt that the child's eyes were similar to the scoundrel's. In the end, the mother did something foolish with her child. But just as the man was talking about this, Sunju suddenly interrupted. You are the woman's husband, aren't you? The man was slightly stunned. Sunju's guess was correct. It seemed that no matter how hard he tried to hide it, his psychological and physical reactions would still show. The human body can't lie. Then the doctor continued to tell his story. After his wife and child passed away, all that was left for him was despair. Moreover, because he failed to cure his wife's paranoia, his pride as a doctor also vanished. But the culprit who caused this tragedy was only sentenced to 4 years in prison by the court. Looking at the smile on the scoundrel's face, the doctor felt very unwilling. So the idea of revenge suddenly arose in his heart, and this became the only motivation urging him to keep living. The doctor started exercising every day, waiting only for the scoundrel to be released after serving his sentence. But it seemed that fate was against the man. The scoundrel actually died the day before he was supposed to regain his freedom. The abruptly ended revenge plan hit his empty soul like a heavy hammer. After that, the doctor could neither find the meaning of living nor a reason to end his life. He could only live like a walking corpse every day, muddling along, until the day he met a patient, and finally got a chance to be reborn. A few years ago, the patient's wife lost her life due to a drunk driver, and his 8-year-old son unluckily became a vegetable. A few days ago, he saw the drunk driver again. The man was still driving while very intoxicated, without being awakened at all by the lives that had been lost. The patient was so angry that he almost wanted to run the man over. But when he thought of his son in the hospital, he finally let go of the accelerator and chose to come to the hospital to treat his mental distress. When the doctor looked at this patient with a similar experience, he knew that prescribing medicine would be useless. This wasn't a trauma that ordinary drugs could cure, so he offered to help kill that man, and after a moment of hesitation, the patient finally nodded in agreement. In this way, the doctor killed someone for the first time. The process was very satisfying, the patient was very pleased, and it perfectly achieved the therapeutic effect the doctor wanted. From then on, the doctor fully believed that violence was the only cure for such trauma. But Sunju didn't agree with this idea at all. Sunju thought the doctor was quibbling, he was purely a murderer who had forgotten his duty. But the doctor wasn't affected by Sunju's words at all.
그러는 기자님은 언론인으로서의 소명을 잘 지키고 계신가요?
네?
The topic turned back to Sunju's purpose for coming to the interview. Was it for an exclusive story or to save a life? This time, the doctor even held her wrist to check her pulse, while asking her to answer. Sunju said she was here only to save a life, not for an exclusive story, but her heart was beating rapidly, coupled with her dilated pupils and slight facial twitches. It was obvious that Sunju didn't tell the truth. Just as the doctor had said before, the human body can't lie. But the doctor generously said he didn't care about this. Just then, the doorbell suddenly rang. It was the room service the doctor had ordered. But when giving a tip, the doctor deliberately provoked the waiter. It turned out that the waiter was also one of the doctor's targets. This man specialized in filming sexual assault videos of women, and then using them to extort money. Dealing with him was just a side task for the doctor. But the waiter wasn't the one the doctor planned to kill that night. Watching the doctor eat meat calmly, a chill rose deep in Sunju's heart. She began to realize that his gentlemanly demeanor was just a facade. His danger was far beyond her imagination. The doctor told Sunju to pull herself together, otherwise the target that night would also die. Seeing that Sunju was still very nervous, he thoughtfully switched to a blue ambient light. Sunju could only force herself to stay calm and continue the interview. She asked what the doctor had done. After killing someone for the first time, the doctor fell into thought for a moment, and said that he had then started actively looking for patients, and volunteering at various psychological counseling centers. He successfully found those eyes filled with despair, and every time he treated someone, he would use the most novel and satisfying treatment method. In the end, he successfully completed all treatment courses. All patients praised his treatment, and the doctor also gained great satisfaction from it. After hearing this, Sunju immediately asked the doctor, "Among the patients who entrusted you, aren't there any who feel guilt?" The doctor smiled and nodded. This kind of situation did exist, but he had his own way to deal with it. It turned out that the doctor wasn't only a psychiatric expert, but also a master of hypnosis. Under his hypnosis, the patient's guilt was completely defenseless. The doctor then took out a coin with different patterns on each side, saying that people usually only show one side, their conscious side, while the other side holds desires hidden in the unconscious. At this point, the doctor suddenly asked Sunju, "Do you know a musician named Paganini?" Junho, who was monitoring from downstairs, immediately heightened his vigilance and decided to carry out the arrest immediately. He told Sunju to keep the doctor occupied until he arrived to make the arrest. Sunju's heart was beating wildly, but she tried her best to stay calm on the surface. Meanwhile, the doctor told her about another patient. That was a child from a poor family but with great talent. He could perfectly play all of Paganini's pieces on a cheap violin. But this talent attracted the abuse of a bully.
지금 문 밖이야. 이제 들어간다. 준비해.
편을 잡아야 할 아이의 왼손을 박살내버렸죠.
Unexpectedly, the copied room card failed in the nick of time, and Junho couldn't break in suddenly. For the safety of his girlfriend Sunju, Junho had to return to the downstairs room first, to wait for an opportunity. Sunju was also left feeling terrified, but just then, the doctor suddenly asked Sunju, "If the injured child were yours, how would you treat the perpetrator? Would you let him go?" Sunju responded to the doctor's question with silence. It was obvious that if the child were hers, she would never forgive the perpetrator. Only then did the doctor tell Sunju that he planned to do the same. He would kill that bully, and his murder plan had already been put into action. He had been hypnotizing the bully over the phone during this period. Now, as long as he made a call, the bully would jump from the rooftop. But the next second, the doctor suddenly told Sunju out of nowhere, the humiliated child's hand was injured by a blade. Sunju suddenly had a realization. because she had recently found a blade in her daughter's school bag. Moreover, her daughter's behavior had been very abnormal recently, and she was especially cold to Sunju. Could it be that her daughter was the bully? So just as the doctor was about to make the call, Sunju immediately shouted to stop him. With a nervous feeling, she asked the doctor, "Is the perpetrator my daughter?" The doctor laughed for a moment before saying, "No, both the perpetrator and the victim are boys." Sunju finally breathed a sigh of relief. Immediately after, the doctor said, "Tell me about the problems your daughter has been having recently." Then, before Sunju could react, the doctor used hypnosis on her. It turned out that the room was also specially chosen by the doctor. The indoor environment perfectly met the best conditions for hypnosis. In this way, Sunju's consciousness gradually blurred. Under the doctor's guidance, she began to talk about her daughter's recent abnormalities. Sunju felt that her daughter had been hiding something from her since 6 months ago. When Sunju's ex-husband filed another custody lawsuit, Sunju suspected if her daughter wanted to go to her father's place. After all, her father was more financially capable, but she herself had been living in very hard life just to raise her daughter. Even if she was wronged at work, she didn't dare to resign.
따님이 밉나요?
The doctor kept tempting Sunju, asking if she hated her daughter, but all Sunju could see in her mind was her daughter's cute appearance when she was little. In the end, Sunju broke free from the hypnosis at the thought of her daughter calling her mom, but the doctor felt no shame at all for hypnotizing her. Seeing that things were getting out of control, Junho told Sunju to sneak attack the doctor with a stun gun. Sunju quietly held the stun gun, took the chance to walk up to the doctor, and said the interview was over. She said she had personally experienced how powerful the doctor was, and there was no point in continuing. But in the nick of time, Sunju couldn't bring herself to do it, and finally had to sit back down. Unexpectedly, the doctor suddenly dropped a bombshell. He said he had not only met with Sunju today, but also invited a criminal policeman who had been waiting downstairs since the beginning. It was obviously Junho. Junho's pupils contracted sharply. He quickly tried to rush out the door, but the door had been locked at some point, and couldn't be opened from the inside at all. The doctor took out his phone and made a call. The landline in Junho's room rang immediately. It turned out the doctor had known their plan all along. As soon as Junho hung up the phone, his legs gave way, and he fell into a baby-like sleep. There was actually a hypnotic gas release device under the bed. On the other side, Sunju still wanted to make one last attempt, but the doctor's reaction was far faster than hers. Finally, Sunju was stunned by a stun gun and passed out. Now, the roles of prey and hunter were suddenly reversed. When Sunju and Junho woke up again, they were both tied to chairs on different floors. The doctor had even carefully changed the room's ambient light to red. Obviously, this made it feel more like an interrogation room. While saying, "Why didn't you keep the secret?" the doctor took out a sharp scalpel. Sunju, who knew when to be sensible, quickly admitted her mistake.
사실 인터뷰를 요청한 이유가 따로 있었거든요. 원래 이 인터뷰의 주인공은 제가 아니라 기자님이거든요.
Seeing the video camera pointed at herself, Sunju panicked immediately. She asked herself if she had ever done anything bad. Why would someone ask the doctor to kill her? So in the face of the doctor's threat, Sunju insisted that she had a clear conscience. The doctor swung his knife, and the restraints on Sunju were cut off. Then Sunju asked the doctor, "Is what's happening today related to the Ilsong Group incident?" The doctor smiled without answering, then took out a video of Junho struggling, and showed it to Sunju. He also warned Junho, "If you want Sunju to stay alive safely, don't try to break free and escape." Sunju had no choice but to speak slowly. About a year ago, she was contacted by a man named Min Suk-hwan, who was the finance team leader of IS Bio, a subsidiary of the Ilsong Group. It turned out that 10 years ago, during the company's new drug development process, it had illegally discharged toxic waste liquid into the Yeonsang River, due to management negligence. To cover up the incident, the company bribed the prosecutor's office and political circles with money. Although the incident wasn't exposed, the toxic waste liquid caused a sharp increase in the incidence and mortality of digestive tract cancer among residents near the discharge site. Min Suk-hwan, who knew the truth, couldn't bear the condemnation of his conscience, so he handed the organized materials to Sunju, hoping she would expose the incident. Later, Sunju collected a lot of evidence through in-depth interviews, and deliberately hid it at home. But just before the report was about to be released, all the evidence was stolen. Even that night, Min Suk-hwan died in a hit-and-run accident. Now, the only witness and physical evidence were gone, and the interview had to be scrapped in the end. But about a month ago, the TV station received an anonymous tip call. claiming that Sunju had colluded with the Ilsong Group to steal account books. Sunju couldn't explain herself clearly, and had been sidelined by the TV station ever since. The doctor let out a soft laugh when he heard this. In fact, he believed Sunju was innocent, because he was the one who made that anonymous tip call. His purpose was to lure Sunju into this trap.
그리고 제가 기자님을 모신 건 기자님을 해치기 위해서가 아닙니다. 치료해드리기 위해서죠.
Sunju was stunned when she heard this. The doctor took out his phone again, and showed Sunju the surveillance footage. Junho was struggling to break free, but his expression was very strange. The doctor also reminded Sunju, guess why he's trying so hard to escape? Is it to come here and save you? The answer was obviously no, because if it were for Sunju, he should have stayed still instead. Finally, the doctor told Sunju a cruel truth. The person who stole the evidence was her boyfriend, Junho. The doctor told Sunju to think carefully. The only person who knew she was investigating the Ilsong Group, knew where she hid the materials at home, and even knew she would come home late that night. Wasn't that only Junho? Then the doctor revealed the truth. Although Junho was a capable detective in the serious crime unit, this also made him a thorn in the side of the local criminal organization. To completely break Junho, they specially set up a honey trap for him. Junho quickly fell for it and had an affair. He was then photographed in indecent images, and fake photos of him taking illegal substances were also created. Threatened with these leverage, Junho became an insider who stole police investigation information for the criminal organization. When Sunju was conducting in-depth investigation, the Ilsong Group took the initiative to contact Junho, asking him to stop her investigation and offering him a very generous reward. But the greedy Junho demanded the position of head of the police search department, because he believed that once he got that position, he could restrain the criminal organization that was manipulating him. But how could the chaebol easily satisfy the ambition of their lackey? So when Junho handed over the materials, all he received was a pile of photos of his own misconduct. But before Sunju could process the truth of her boyfriend's betrayal, the doctor said that this wasn't even the most important part. In fact, there was a witness to this incident. The doctor looked solemn and told Sunju to mentally prepare herself, because the truth to come would be very cruel. Only after Sunju nodded did the doctor continue. That night, Junho sneaked into Sunju's house to steal the materials, when no one was around. But unexpectedly, he was caught by Sunju's daughter Yirin, who had skipped school and come home. To make Yirin keep quiet, Junho raped her and even recorded a video during the act, to use as a threat. Sunju collapsed instantly. She couldn't bear to listen any further. The first reaction of her brain's protective mechanism was to refuse to believe this was true, because her daughter had always relied heavily on Junho.
한상우는 예린이가 친아빠에게 가게 죽기보다 싫어한다는 걸 알았습니다. 그래서 그런 짓을 벌인 거죠. 예린이에게 그런 일이 벌어진 게 알려진다면
All the doctor's actions today were to push Sunju to her limit, forcing her to face her true feelings directly. Moreover, the doctor had other accomplices. The female patient who had been threatened by the male waiter was actually a security guard at this hotel. This was why the doctor could freely access the hotel's surveillance and door lock systems. Seeing that Sunju still didn't fully believe him, the doctor took out his phone and told Sunju to call her daughter to confirm. Sunju dialed her daughter's number with trembling hands, and the moment the call connected, she could barely hold back her sobs.
엄마, 지금 의사 선생님이랑 같이 있어? 엄마, 미안해. 내가 진작 말하려고 했는데.
Now the doctor's words were confirmed, and Sunju held the phone, sobbing uncontrollably. The doctor said a few comforting words to Yirin on Sunju's behalf, then hung up the call. Then the doctor asked Sunju to tell him her decision, which he entrusted him to help with the treatment. Yirin had already made her choice. After calming down, Sunju wanted to confront Junho face to face. The doctor agreed willingly and emphasized to Sunju that no matter what happened, she must trust her own judgment. When Sunju went downstairs with a gun, Junho had already struggled hard to break free from his restraints. Sunju shot him a sharp question. Did you really do that beastly thing to Yirin? Upon hearing this, Junho shouted with an innocent look on his face. Was all our years of relationship for nothing? Would you rather believe a murderer than me? Don't forget he's a master of hypnosis. Maybe Yirin was hypnotized by him too. Sunju felt a moment of hesitation after hearing this, but the next second she remembered something. When she found her home had been broken into, she immediately called the police and asked Junho to help with the investigation. At that time, she had accidentally noticed her daughter's eyes looked very strange.
네가 그랬어.
Unluckily, Sunju was no match for Junho in strength. He quickly grabbed the gun from her and pinned her to the ground. To vent his anger at being tormented by the doctor, Junho kicked Sunju several times, but soon, the doctor's voice sounded behind him. Unexpectedly, the doctor showed no fear at all of the gunpoint. Because there were no bullets in the gun at all, everything was within the doctor's expectation. Immediately after, Sunju injected the anesthetic the doctor had given her into Junho's body, and he soon lost consciousness. The doctor told Sunju to go home and be with her daughter first. He would take care of everything next. When Junho woke up again, he found himself tied up in a secret room with plastic sheets spread all around. After all, this arrangement would make cleaning easier. The doctor wanted Junho to fully experience the pain and fear that Yirin had once felt. After some time, with the doctor's hypnotherapy, Yirin had almost stepped out of the shadow and was ready to start a new and beautiful life. But Sunju refused hypnotherapy. Killing someone was an inescapable fact, and she needed to bear that sense of guilt. Sunju asked the doctor curiously, "You've killed so many people, don't you feel anything at all? The blood on your hands must be hard to wash off, right?" After Sunju left, the doctor looked at his own hands, and suddenly felt a little mentally exhausted. But just as he was about to get off work, a nurse informed him that an abused child had just been admitted to the hospital. The doctor's eyes instantly became firm again. As long as there was still a soul in need of redemption, he couldn't stop. The story ends here. What should we do when the law can't control those bad people? Although the movie doesn't give a standard answer, it explores this question thoroughly, allowing everyone to see the helplessness and struggle behind it. First, there are the loopholes in the law and the trap of vigilante justice. The doctor wasn't born a murderer. He was originally a psychiatrist who saved lives and healed the wounded. But after his wife and child were harmed by a villain, the law only sentenced the villain to 4 years in prison, a punishment that couldn't ease his pain at all. Later, when he saw more people being tormented by villains beyond the law's control, he thought killing those villains was the only cure. These villains are indeed hateful, but the doctor crossed the line in essence by using murder to solve problems. It's clear that when the law fails to uphold justice, some people are forced to seek justice through extreme means, but such methods only create more harm. Just like the doctor himself, the more he killed, the dirtier his hands became, and the harder it was for him to turn back. As for the journalist Sunju, she finally refused the doctor's hypnosis. She knew she might have been involved in violence, but she didn't want to use hypnosis to escape her guilt. She wanted to remember this pain. The two made different choices, but each had their own persistence and burden to bear. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.